Hilchos Issurei Biah Perek Shishi, the laws of forbidden relationships, chapter 6. I'm going to be a little honest with you. The first 6 halachot of this chapter have inspired tremendous debate throughout the generations. In many ways, it remains unclear what exactly the Rambam's position is on the issue that he's going to present today. So like we always do, we only have so much time to learn. So I'm going to present just one way of understanding the Rambam. That's the way we're going to go. But just be aware that the topic of today is a very, very debated topic. And that is how to determine a woman's monthly cycle. Do we go with the natural phenomenon, the fact that a woman sees more or less once a month, and that's her fixed time of sighting? Or do we go fully by what's called the halachic cycle, which the Rambam is going to explain momentarily? And it seems that the Rambam kind of balances both. And that's what makes it so hard to understand his words. But let's see it inside so we can appreciate the issues. It says the Rambam halacha aleph, dam hanida v'dam hazava, blood that makes a woman into a nida. That we said the other day is the fixed menstrual cycle. And blood that makes a woman into a zava, which is irregular uterine bleeding. V'dam hakoishi, blood that accompanies the beginning of labor, of childbirth, which we're going to learn about tomorrow. V'dam yeledas, and the blood that's expelled during birth. V'dam toyhar shel yeledas, as well as the blood of purity that a birthing woman gets. After a couple of days of impurity, she gets a free pass for about a month or 2 months, depending if she had a boy or a girl. All of these bloods, kulei dam echadu, is really one blood. Umin hamakar huba, it all comes from the uterus. Umayon echadu, it's one flow. Ubizmanim bilvad hu sheyishtan edinoi, it's only the times that it shows up that creates the difference in law. V'tiyaroya dam, and when a woman sees the blood, zu tahira, v'zu nida, v'zu zava. One will be pure, let's say it's the days after birth. One will be a nida, if it's in the nida days, the regular fixed time of sighting. V'zu zava, and the one will be a zava, if it's in the irregular type of time of sighting. But it's all the same blood. Don't get confused. I think that it's coming from different places. It's all one blood, just the time decides the law. Like bread. All year round, it's permitted. Same bread on Pesach is forbidden. It's the same bread, but it's a time thing that dictates its prohibition or permission. Same with the blood. It's all coming from the same place. The timing is what makes all the difference. It says the Rambam halacha beis ketzad. What do we mean that time will dictate what type of blood this is? Kishetira ha'isha dam techila. Says the Rambam, when a woman sights blood for the first time in her life. Oy kishetira bishas vesta. Or she sights blood at the normal fixed time of her sighting, which is the time she has come to establish as her menstrual sighting. Over the years, women begin with more irregular periods and they kind of establish a fixed pattern. So the first time a woman sights blood, or later in life, once she has an established pattern, when she sights blood at that expected time, harezu nida kol shiva sayamim, she becomes a nida for all 7 days. So for example, we're going to use these orange days here as the nida days. Were she to sight blood on this Monday, right over here, she would be considered a nida in this state for the full 7 orange days, bein ra'asar kol shiva, whether she continues sighting blood for all 7 days, bein shalei ra'asar latipa rishona bilvad, or maybe she only sees 1 drop on the first day and that's it. But the fact that she saw blood, either for the first time in her life or on the day that's fixed for sighting, makes her into a nida for 7 days. Once those 7 days pass, Ra'as dam b'yom hashmini, if she were to then sight blood on the 8th day, and by 8th we mean 8th from the beginning of the count from her natural cycle of menstruation, but it's the 8th day in the sense that it's number 8 from that day, Harei zeh dam ziva. Now, the status of the blood is transformed, and it becomes the blood of ziva, of irregular flow, mipnei shehu b'loi es nidasa, because it is in the time that's not the time of her natural sighting. That's the way the Torah describes it. In this verse, you see over here, it says the woman, when her blood flows for many days, b'loi es nidasa, not in the time of her regular fixed sighting. So that becomes the blood of ziva. Halacha gimel, v'chein kol dam shatira. So too, any blood that she will see. B'soich hayamim shebein vesas nida levesas nida, any days between the fixed time of sighting for a nida to the next fixed time of sighting for a nida. And this does not mean, this is what we're going to explain it here, this does not mean a monthly cycle. This means between the time that the Torah prescribes, between one nida cycle and the next. Harehu dam ziva, it is considered the blood of ziva of irregular flow. The halacha l'Moshe miSinai, it's a halacha transmitted orally from Moshe on Mount Sinai, she'ein bein zman nida lizman nida ela achad asar yom bilvad. That biblically, speaking from the Torah's perspective, the time frame between one round of nida and the second round of nida is only 11 days. So these blue 11 days, any blood sighted on these blue days would be considered irregular flow, blood of ziva. Once those 11 days pass, according to the Rambam, the woman renews her cycle of nida. And now if she were to see blood over here, even though it's only 19 days since the last period, which is not a regular time of sighting for a woman, usually it's a monthly interval, 30 days. But here, the cycle of nida renews. And were she to see blood over here, she's going to be considered again in the status of a nida. Now what about the fact that if you keep following this calendar, what's going to emerge is that the day number 30 from this day, which would typically be the time when she would have her monthly sighting, is going to end up in the irregular flow days. Because if you count 7, 11, and then another pattern of 7 and 11, day number 30 is going to come out to be in the middle of the second round of 11. Which then is supposed to back her up to the beginning of her nida cycle. And indeed, that's how many commentaries understand the Rambam. But the Rambam saying the woman establishes a pattern of 7-11, 7-11 only if she does not have a fixed monthly interval. But if she has a fixed monthly interval, then it begins at that monthly interval again, the 7 days of nida. Then you count again 11 days of irregular flow. You do start again another count of 7, but when the monthly number hits, you go back to here, as if we're back to the beginning, as we're going to see the Rambam express in the later halachot. From this perspective, says the Rambam halacha dalid, Kol shivas hayamim shenikbe Allah veses bitchilasan. All of the 7 days, whose beginning is her regular fixed time of sighting. And now with the word veses, the Rambam is going back to the natural monthly interval. In other words, once a woman has established a fixed period in which she can know that this is the date which is supposed to set off my monthly cycle, that group of 7 days, hein hanikroin yemei nidasa, those are going to be labeled as the days of her nida sighting, bein ra'asa bahendam, bein loy ra'asa bahendam, a huge novelty, whether or not she actually sights blood. Most of the other Rishonim argue with the Rambam on this point. They say a woman never begins a cycle of 7 nida days until she actually sights the blood. The Rambam says no. If you have an established fixed pattern, you know on day 16 of the month, that's when you typically begin to see blood. That's when your 7 orange days, where am I over here? The 7 days of nida begin. Whether or not I'm going to see blood on this day, or maybe it's only going to be on this day, or even on this day. But the 7 days have begun when my fixed pattern is supposed to begin. Why in this case would they be called nida days if there's no blood sighted? Because they're possible, they're fit to have a woman become a nida in those days. Any blood that it's observed by a woman in those days will be considered in the class of nida blood. Halacha hey, the 11 days following the 7. In other words, she has a fixed pattern, fixed cycle is meant to begin over here. So she has a 7-day period of nida days, and then begins an 11-day period of ziva days, which means any blood that she'll see then will be irregular. These are going to be called the days of her ziva, the days of her irregular flow. And again, bein ra'asa bahendam, bein loy ra'asa, whether or not she'll actually see blood on those days. For what purpose are we labeling them the days of ziva? Because they're fit to have a woman become a zava in those days. Any blood that will be cited in those days will be under the class of zava, irregular blood. Be very careful about these 2 names, which are the days of nida, days of ziva. These are the days you have to always keep track on which potentially a woman could become a nida and potentially become a zava. As the Rambam will explain what causes a woman to become a full zava. Halacha vav kol yemei ha'isha, all the days of a woman's life. Miyayim sheyikava laveses ad shetamus, from the day she establishes a fixed time of sighting until she dies. Oyad sheyakir haveses liyayim acher, or otherwise the fixed pattern will move to another date. And the Rambam will explain how that can happen in the later chapters. But if she has an expected time of sighting, and that expected time has become established, tispar le'olam, she will have to keep track forever, shiva mitchilas yom haveses, 7 days from the beginning of the fixed cycle, the achareyan achad asar, and afterwards another period of 11 days. The achareyan shiva, the achareyan achad asar, and then 7-11. This pattern on the screen here: 7 of orange, 12 of blue. 7 of orange, 11 of blue. because she has to know what blood she's seeing. The problem is that the month, as I mentioned before, the problem is that the monthly calendar doesn't sync with this, because.
No, we know that, but the thing is the days are days. You count 7, you count,
11.
11. You count 7, you count 11. It doesn't matter who cares where it falls in the month.
That's the whole problem, because on the one hand you're saying that a woman does have a monthly time of sighting, which means that at a monthly specific time she's going to be a nida, because that's what nida is. Nida is menstrual cycle that's at a fixed time. And yet if you're going to follow the 7-11 calendar, it's going to end up that typically the monthly sighting will be in the middle of irregular flow days.
No, I understand.
That's the problem with putting together these two calendars.
It should be 7, then 23.
Oh, that's how most
7,
other people, exactly. That's exactly the big problem with the Rambam here. Because every other commentary on the Talmud says that when the Talmud says 7-11, it just means 7 days are the natural beginning of the month. 11 days, if she'll see blood, she'll be irregular. But not that after those 11, the 7 start again. Of course not. Then you have 3 days till the end of the month. And when she sees her next period, the 7-11 cycle begins again.
Why is it a problem? It would be 7.
Because look, Nida days, the word Nida by definition means regular sighting, natural sighting. Ziva means irregular, unnatural sighting. Okay. How often does a woman see blood unnaturally? Naturally, how often does she see blood? Let's call it once a month. Okay, let's call it once a month. Yeah, well, 3-4 days, but let's just say it's the day of sighting is once every 30 days. Okay, so forget the orange and blue. Let's just count. If this is day 1, okay, where is day 30? Day 30 is going to be over here. This is day 1. Okay, this is day 30.
Yeah.
Okay? Right. That means that from one expected natural time of sighting till the next natural time of sighting is going to be here to here. But then if you throw in, and you tell me that according to the Torah, a woman has 7 days of natural sighting, and then 11 days of unnatural sighting. 7 days of natural sighting, 11 days of unnatural sighting. Well, then the next natural sighting is going to come out on an unnatural day. So what is it? Is it going to be Nida blood, because it's the regular time of sighting? Or you're going to say, no, 7-11 calendar, it's Ziva blood, it's irregular blood. That is the big challenge to the Rambam. That's why some comment.
Between the two.
How?
You said that they have a blood.
No, it's the same blood. The blood's the same. We're saying Bizmanim Bilvad. It's only times that changes the law. That's why I'm saying that's what I said in the beginning of the chapter, that some say that the 7-11 is not really 7-11. It's 7-11, 7-4.
Yeah, it can't be 7-11, 7-11, because that's 18 and 18. That's 36. That's
So look, if her cycle is 36, some women do have that.
Yeah.
If they have a 36 cycle, then it fits very well.
You have to fit your...
But if it's a 30 days, exactly. So the commentaries want to say that the Rambam means 7-11, 7-11 is for a woman who doesn't have a fixed cycle. But if you do have a fixed cycle, when your fixed cycle comes around, you go back to square one, quite literally, in which that begins the 7 days of regular, followed by 11 days of irregular, followed by 7 days of regular, followed by whatever amount of days irregular till the next regular cycle comes, and then the regular cycle begins anew. That's how most understand it. Yeah. But yes. However, but if there's no fixed cycle, then yes, she must keep track of 7-11, 7-11 forever. Let's go on. She must be careful in the count. So she'll always be aware. Whenever she sees blood, is she seeing it in the days that are regular nida blood sighting or ziva irregular blood sighting? According to the Rambam, all the days of a woman are a revolving cycle. Shiva yemei nida, the achadasar yemei ziva, 7 days of regular sighting, 11 days of irregular sighting. Elohim kein ifsika aleida, unless birth interrupts the process. Kameshi Yizbar, as will be explained in tomorrow's chapter at length, how birth disrupts this regular count. But regularly speaking, it's a pattern of 7-11, 7-11 forever. If you're a woman with an irregular cycle, that's great for you, because you're always going to anyway have an irregular cycle, and so you'll have to know if it's nida blood by the Torah or ziva blood by the Torah. If you have a regular cycle, so we mentioned before, this is exactly where the commentaries debate on the Rambam's position, and many come to the understanding that the Rambam is of the position that if it's a regular, fixed, established time of sighting, then you must reckon with that. And when that time comes, the 7-11 count begins again. Now, the hard part is over. Now we're going to kind of zoom in to the ziva days, the irregular days. And the Rambam is going to go in and defining what will make a woman into a zava. What makes a woman into a woman who is experiencing an irregular flow. Says the Rambam halacha zayin. Isha shara sadam bimei zivasa. If a woman sees blood in the irregular times, so this is going to be the blue days. Okay, I'm going to another screen here. but imagine it's the blue days. Okay? It's the irregular times, and she sees blood for one day, on this Monday here, or for two. Within the blue days, one day alone or for 2 days one after another, nikras zava ketana. She is called a minor zava, a minor woman with an irregular flow, not minor in age, minor in status. V'nikras, she's also called in halacha shoimeres yoim keneged yoim, the woman who needs to guard one day corresponding to the one day of impurity. As we're going to see, the Rambam is going to say, in either of these cases, she must make sure that the next day is fully pure with no blood sighting, and go to the mikveh that day, and then she's pure to her husband afterwards. Same thing if she saw 2 days, go to the mikveh, guard one day of purity, and you're good. But once she'll see blood for 3 days, one after the other, and again, imagine this is the blue days, but she's seeing blood for 3 days in a row.
This is
in the 11 days. Harezu zava gemura. She is a complete zava. V'hiya nikras zava gedola, otherwise known as the major zava, v'nikras zava stam. And it's her that we refer to when we use the word zava with no clarification. If you hear the word zava plain means a woman who has experienced 3 days of blood flow in the 11 days. Shenemar, because it says, and this is the verse over here that we brought up before, v'isha, a woman, ki yazuv zoiv dama, yamim rabim, when the blood flow of her blood will flow for many days, then she becomes a zava. What does many days mean? Miut yamim shnayim. The minimum included in the word yamim, days, is 2. And the Torah adds rabim, many days, shloisha, that means 3. So from here we learn that when you have 3 days of irregular blood flow, she becomes a zava. Now, whether or not you're a minor or a major zava, ein bein zava gedola le zava ketana, there's no difference between a major and a minor zava, ella sfiras shiva v'havas karban. Only the special law of counting 7 clean days and bringing a sacrifice. Shezava gedola, because once a woman becomes a major zava, again, she sees blood for 3 days, tzricha lispar shiva yamim nikiyim. She must count 7 spotless days. That means 7 days have to pass where she sees no blood. V'zava ketana eina seferas alayim echad bilvat. Whereas a minor zava only counts 1 day of purity. That's the one difference. V'zava gedola. The second difference is that the major zava, mevia karban keshatitar, needs to bring a sacrifice when she becomes pure. And there's a whole set of laws on this in the 9th book of the Rambam. V'zava ketana eina mevia karban keshatitar. Whereas the minor zava does not have to bring a sacrifice when she becomes pure. Avali inyan tuma v'isur Biah. But with regards to ritual impurity, or the prohibition to have relations with them, shtei and shavis, they're both equal. If you see blood in the irregular blood flow days, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, doesn't make a difference. You cannot have relations with them. The question is, how long till you can have relations? Will they have to count 7 days, bring a sacrifice? That's the only difference. Ketzad, the Rambam describes it now. Halacha tes, let's go into what this looks like. Ra sodam bimezi vasa. A woman sees blood in the days of her irregular blood flow. Bein sharasa bitchilas halayla, bein sharasa b'seif hayom. Whether she sees blood at the beginning of the night, because in Torah calendar the day begins at night, or she sees at the end of the day, 2 minutes before sunset. That day is considered to be entirely impure. We treat it as though the blood never stops flowing from the moment she saw the blood till the moment of sunset. Now she must be vigilant and guard all night. So she saw blood over here, Monday by day, or Sunday night. Now Monday night, she needs to watch and see what happens the next morning. Im le'ra'asa klum balayla. Where am I at? Im le'ra'asa klum balayla. If she didn't see any blood by night, mashkemes lemachar. She wakes up early the next morning, v'toiveles achar shetani tzachama, and goes to the mikveh right after sunrise. Now the mikveh doesn't transform her into being pure. The mikveh just says that if all day today will pass clean, then you can go right into the night having relations with your husband. She must guard the entire day. If she now sees nothing the whole day, we now have one clean day, one pure day, corresponding to the one impure day. And she's permitted to her husband that night. That's the first picture over here. Monday, the first day here, is a day of sighting. The next day, in the morning, she goes to the mikveh. You don't want to even wait. Do an early mikveh, hoping that it's going to be a clean day. And if indeed it's a clean day, And that night, they're already permitted. But if she sees blood also on the second day, so she saw blood on the first day. She tried guarding the second day, but it didn't work out. There was blood again. Like you said, maybe she went to mikveh in the morning. And then she began to bleed again later in the day. Or she never had the chance. Blood was flowing for 1 day and for 2 days. Bein beleiloi, whether by night. Bein b'yoymei achar shetavla, or by day after she went to mikveh. Harei hayoym hasheni tameh. The second day now also becomes impure. U'mishameres kol leil shlishi, and she must guard this night, the third night. Im lo yira'asa, again, if she didn't see any blood that night, mashkemas lemachar, she wakes up early in the morning. V'teiveles achar shatanet zachama, goes to the mikveh after sunrise. U'mishameres kol hayoym, and guards the whole day. Im lo yira'asa klum, if she saw nothing. Harei zayim echad toher keneged shnei yamim atmein. You now have one clean day opposite the 2 impure days. Umuteres lebaylo le'erdev, and she's again permitted to her husband that night. That's called shomeret yom keneged yom. She guards 1 day opposite the 1 day or 2 days of impurity. Now, halacha yud aleph, ro'as adam gam bashlishi, if she were to see blood also on the third day. So now we're in this picture over here. Now she's got 3 consecutive days of sighting blood. Bein b'yoymei, bein b'leila, again, whether by day or by night. Harezu zava gedoyla. Now she becomes a major zava. Tzricha lispar shiva yamim tohirim b'leidam. She must count 7 pure, clean days with no sighting of blood. Shenemar, because it says v'safra la shivas yamim v'goymer. That's the verse over here. This verse says v'im tahara mizova. If once she becomes pure from her irregular flow, in other words, once the flow stops, she must count v'safra la shivas yamim v'achar titar. She must count 7 days and then become pure. V'toiveles bayoim hashvi, and she goes to the mikveh on the 7th day, achar hanetzachama, after sunrise. Again, like the woman who guards 1 day of purity, on the day that she could potentially become pure, on this 7th day over here, she's already going to go to the mikveh in the morning, and hopefully that day will be pure. And that evening she can have relations with her husband. Ubayoim hashmini, on the 8th day, mevia karbana, she brings a special sacrifice, which we're going to explore in a later book, 2 pigeons or 2 turtle doves. It's a bird sacrifice. Yud Beis. Zava ketana shetavla balayla shel yom hashamor. What if the minor Zava didn't wait till the next day? She saw blood on this day, and that night, the night which she's supposed to be guarding, she went to the mikveh. Oy Zava gedoyla shetavla belil shvi, or the great Zava, who went to the mikveh not on the 7th day, but on the 7th night. This night over here, between the 6th and 7th clean days. Ki'ilu loy tavla, it's as though she never went to the mikveh. V'hari kenida shetavla b'seich shiva, it's like a regular menstruating woman who would go to the mikveh during 7 days. Not allowed. Same thing here, doesn't help. You must go in the daytime of the day which you could become fully pure. But, well, in this case, the last green day, over here. This is the night will she become pure. That morning she goes to the mikveh. Over here also for the 1 day. These are the days that she's going to become pure. In that morning she goes to the mikveh. Now, haba al zava gedayla. B'yom shvi shal svira achar shetavla. If somebody has relations with a great zava on the 7th day of counting after she went to the mikveh. So this is the case here. We're going back to the screen. This day, if all goes well, and she's pure all day, she'll be fully pure. But she already went to the mikveh in the morning of that day. So somebody says, I'm going to chaparayim. Right after the mikveh, he has relations with her. Or he has relations with a minor zava on the day that she's waiting, but it's already after mikveh. So she's in a kind of limbo state right now. She's already gone to the mikveh, but she needs to wait till sunset to become fully pure. And in the middle of that day, the husband has relations. Pater min hakaris. He's exempt from excision. Can't hold you accountable. Kevan shetavla bisman haroy litvila. So since she went to the mikveh at the proper time, tahira, she's already in a way considered pure. However, this woman is going to end up having some bad behavior coming to her. Because anybody she engages in relations with, anything she touches, is hanging in the balance. What does it mean they're hanging in the balance? Because you have to know what's going to happen today. If all goes well and the day completes with, after the mikveh with no seeing blood, okay, retroactively, whatever she touched after the mikveh is pure. And the relations after the mikveh, you're also not going to be held liable. But imagine what happens if she's going to see blood after the mikveh, retroactively it's going to reveal nimtza zava lemafreya. Exactly, she's retroactively a full zava. V'kol shenaga b'le mafreya tameh. Whatever she touched going back is impure. V'hi ubaya lechayavin b'karban. Her and the man engaged in relations with her are going to be liable to a sin offering. And that's exactly why that's why the sages said you're forbidden to your husband till the night. Not to bring yourself to a case of doubt. So if you did it, you're hanging in the balance. No, one day is just, it's one full day. Here, she goes to the mikveh in the morning, wait till the night. Don't do anything this day, because this day could convert into a day of impurity, and you don't want to take that chance. It says that Rambam Malachat Tezvav, Zava Shesafra Sheishas Yamim Nikim. An unfortunate case. A woman sees 3 days of blood, irregular blood flow, she becomes a Zava. She needs to count 7 clean days. Ubashvi Ra Sodam. And unfortunately, on the 8th day, on the 7th day, the last day of her count, here it is. She sees blood. So here, she counts three blood flow days. She began to count 6 spotless days. On day 7, boom, she sees blood again. Afilu samach lishkias achama, even right before sunset. Soiseres hakoil. She destroys the count. V'chayzeres limnois me'achara yematame shiva yamim nikim. She must go back and count from after the impure day another set of 7 clean days. By the way, I meant to say it before, and I'm going to say it again at the end of the chapter. All of what we're learning today only applied in Talmudic times. Today, the Rambam will say in chapter 11, we treat every blood flow like zava. We don't wait for 3 days. We don't do the Nida, Ziva, 7-11. Whenever a woman sees blood, she needs to count 7 clean days, like the Zava, before she can resume relations with her husband. So this concept actually applies very much today. Typically, on a regular month, a woman has her cycle. She needs to wait 5 days till the blood flow stops. Then she begins a count of 7 spotless days. If on the 7th spotless day she sees blood again, the whole count is ruined, and you got to go to the And this can go on for a long time, and unfortunately, it does happen to some women. They have unnatural cycles, and they cannot be with their husbands for long periods of time. This is when the rabbis come in and they really try their best to make it pure, and find ways. Huh? Yeah, but most women are not going to be like that. It's unfortunate. I have a friend in Israel who we were talking, and he told me that he had to deal with many rabbis about that. Because his wife was having an issue, and it becomes basically impossible. Right. Because you're trying, and somehow every time on the 7th day, it doesn't even have to be on the 7th, it could be on the 5th. Could be on the 5th day, 6th day, but imagine it's a 7, it pushes out 7 again. Yeah. And there's many tricks around this. When to do the check, you do the inspection earlier, later, you can go to the mikveh earlier sometimes. It's a whole thing. The rabbis will do their best to get around it. But this is the basic law. The basic law is if she sees blood on the 7th day, the 7th day goes to the garbage, and you got to start again a count of 7 days. Tezayin polta shichva zera b'soichi me'asvira. If a woman discharged semen during the days of this count, in other words, she had relations, and she discharged from the relations. The semen, either she had forbidden relations, or it's from relations from before the prohibited time. So that discharge only ruins 1 day. It's like a person who's a zav, a man who has an irregular discharge from his organ, and in the middle of the days of his counting, because he also has to count 7 clean days, he sees a different type of emission. He also destroys 1 day of the count, so here you only destroy 1 day of the count. Now, take a look at this. Remember the 7-11 cycle. So she has 7 days of Nida days, 11 days of Zava days. You can only become a full Zava if you see blood on 3 of the blue days. But what if she saw blood on day 10, and day 11, and day 12? So technically she's got 3 consecutive days of sighting blood. However, 2 of them are in the irregular days, and 1 of them is in a different category. It's Nida. So the Rambam says, even though factually she has seen blood for 3 days in a row, Eina Zava Gedela. She is not a major Zava. Ela yatzas mizivus kitana linida. She exits from the state of being a minor Zava to being a Nida. Sheyem shneim asar maschelas nidasa, because day 12 begins the Nida cycle again. The haraya b'min nidasa eina Zava kamesha bi'arnu. And if you see blood during Nida days, you're not considered a Zava. Zava is only for irregular days, for the 11 blue, not for the 7 orange. Now, if that's the case, what then is the meaning of the words in the Torah? Oy ki sazuv al nidasa. Or she'll experience an irregular blood flow close to her Nida time. That's the words in the Torah. It says if she has irregular blood flow for many days, not during the time of her nida, oy ki sazuv al nidasa, or maybe she'll experience the blood flow right near the nida time. Isn't this the case? Blood flow right near the nida time. Says the Rambam, no, that's not the case. The case is the following picture. Were she to see 3 days of blood flow right after the 7 days of nida, harezu zava. We don't consider it to be an extension of the nida. The fact that it's in the irregular days makes her into a zava. For example, she saw day 8, 9, and 10, if you were counting from the beginning of the nida days. Day 1, 2, and 3 of the 11 days that are reserved for her irregular flow.
So
She sees these 3 days, she becomes a zava.
Can't have relations.
Yeah.
She still can't say push it from 10 to 10 days.
Yes, but the point is that the fact that she saw these 3 days during the 11 irregular days makes her into a zava already, even if it's coming right off the heels of nida sighting. That's what the Torah means. She may even experience the irregular blood flow right after the nida. Doesn't matter. It's in irregular days. It's irregular. It's treated as a zava. If a woman sees blood on the 11th day of the irregular days, she goes to the mikvah that night, the night of the 12th. And has relations. Even if ritually she is impure, the one who had relations with her is impure, and they will do what's called mishkavu moshav. Anything they lie on, anything they sit on, they become impure. Einam chayavim kares. They're not going to be liable to excision. This is an interesting case. Think about this. She sees blood over here. Typically, when a woman sees 1 day of blood in ziva days, she needs to guard the next day in purity. But over here, the next day is anyway a different part of her cycle. Even if she'll see blood, it's going to be classified as nida, not as ziva. So therefore, even if she doesn't do what's right, she's not supposed to. She goes to the mikvah on the night following the day of sighting, and she has relations, we can't hold her accountable. Because whatever happens the next day is not going to matter. Day 12 is not going to combine with day 11 to make her into a zava, because it's nida days. So therefore, the mikvah that she had on this night helps her to save her from bringing a sacrifice. But if she went to the mikvah on the 12th day, after sunrise, so if she had seen blood over here, and went to the mikvah on the next day as she's supposed to, but it's really a different part of the cycle. She should still retain those laws and be forbidden to her husband till the evening, like any minor zava. And if they transgressed and had relations, they're both going to be exempt, again, because it's a different part of the cycle. Even if she will see blood after the relations on day 12, there's nothing to worry about. It's blood of nida, does not combine to the day before it. Now we have to remember a principle called bein hashmashot. Bein hashmashot means the time period between sunset and nightfall when we're not sure which day it belongs to. So follow this image here. Ra'as adam b'seif shvi l'nidasa bein hashmashos. Woman sees blood at the end of the 7th day, which should belong to her nida days, but it's the time of the twilight. It's kind of the in-between time. We're not sure does it belong to this day or to the first of the irregular days. And then she sees on day 9 and day 10. So now we really need to know where this box belongs. Because if this box belongs to nida days, that means she only has 2 days of sighting on the ziva days and only requires 1 day of purity. But if we're going to move this box to the first day of the blue, now she's got 3 consecutive days, she's a zava. Harezus, fake zava.
7-day shot.
That's right. So she's in doubt. We keep her a zava out of doubt. Perhaps the first sighting was at the night of the 8th. Which means she has seen now for 3 days from the beginning of her regular days. Same thing would be on the other end of the 11 days. This way. If she sees blood on day 9 and day 10 of her irregular days, and on the end of the 11th day, she sights blood, again during the twilight time. Now we have to know which side it belongs to. If it belongs to the next day, then there's no problem. There was a 2-day cycle in the ziva days. no big issue, 1 day of purity. But if it's backed up and it belongs to day 11, well, now she's stuck. She's got 3 days of zava. She needs to count 7 clean days. Says the Rambam, Harezus fake zava. She's again a zava in doubt. Perhaps the last sighting was on day 11, and she has seen blood for 3 days in her ziva days, which is bad news. And therefore, it's in doubt. Halacha chaf. Nida shebadka atzma b'seich yemei nidasa. Let's go to the standard case. A woman is seeing blood in her nida days. Okay? Classic calendar. 7 days of nida, she sees blood here. And she checks herself, she inspects herself because she wants to know if she stopped bleeding. Umatza shepasak adam. And she finds that indeed the blood has stopped. Afilu pasak ba'asheni l'nidasa. Even on the second day, which rarely happens, but it could happen. She bled only for 1 day. The next day, she's clean. And then she was inadvertent or purposeful. And she never inspected herself till many days after her nida. Let's just jump 2 weeks, okay? Over here. For 2 weeks, she didn't inspect herself at all. And when she now inspects herself, she finds blood, impurity. We do not say maybe she's discovering now it's a problem from before. She was bleeding for a few days already, and maybe she's a zava. No. If the last thing we know is that she's pure, the fact that today she discovered impurity, she's only discovered impurity from now on. All the days she didn't check herself are presumed to be pure. Now she's impure, the count starts from today. On the other hand, if she had inspected herself originally and found herself to be impure, even if she had checked on the 7th day of the nida days, so she's bleeding over here and she checks over here, day 7, when the regular bleeding should be really over. But she saw blood on this day, she found impurity. And she never checked herself at the end of the day, as was customary and is customary till today. You close the last day of the count with an inspection just to make sure that it's completely stopped. It's called hefsek tahara. She didn't do a check in the twilight to separate herself from nida impurity. Rather, she waited a couple of days and only then checked herself and found herself to be pure. Harezus fake zava. She's a doubtful zava. Even though the last thing we know is that she's impure by nida count, but if she only waited till, let's say, about here, and only here found herself to be pure, even if it's pure, we have to worry that all of the other days she was bleeding still. And she may be a zava in doubt. Be matzah tmeya, and if she finds herself to be impure, well, that's even worse. Harezu zava vadai, she is a certain zava. Even though all we know is last nida impurity, but since the last thing we know is impurity, now that she discovers impurity here, it's one big zava. Shekevan shebatchila matzah tmeya, l'basayif tmeya. Since she finds impurity in the beginning and at the end, harezu becheskas shalei pasak, it can be presumed that it never stopped. Now, the yom rishon shal nida, the first day of the nida cycle, afal pisha matzah by tahira, even if a woman inspects herself and finds herself to be pure, inspections on day 1 don't work. Harezu kimisha matzah tmeya, it's as if she found herself to be impure. Sheyom rishon kulei huchzak hamayan pasuach. All of day 1, the flow is considered to be open. So no check helps over here, but already on day 2, that'll help. Chaf Aleph, Zava, a woman who is a Zava. She's established as sighting 3 times in the irregular days. She's counting 7 spotless days. Ideally, she's supposed to inspect herself every one of the 7 days twice. Once in the morning, once in the evening. This in fact is followed even today, when every woman is considered to be a Zava. During the 7 spotless days that women count, every day in the morning and in the evening, they have to check themselves. But what if she didn't do the full thing? Zava shabatka atzma berishen mimei asfira o matzatar. She checked herself on day 1 of the count, right here, and she's pure. V'leibatka ad yom shvi matzatar, and she didn't check any of the other days till day 7, and finds herself to be pure. Harezu becheskas tara, she can be presumed to be pure. Uki'ilu badka kol shiva o matzatar, it's as though she checked all 7 days, and she's pure. Again, not ideal, don't do this. But if she did, then she's pure. The rabbis will use this today as well. If women have problems with internal checkings, and it causes them, it's very abrasive and it causes extra bleeding which shouldn't happen, they will initially tell this woman privately, you only have to check on day 1 and day 7. And you can rely on this law. Same case. She checked herself on day 1 found herself to be pure. But here, ubayim hashmini umatzah toher. She did not, on the seventh day when she was supposed to, she didn't check herself. But she didn't go to the mikveh either. She waited an extra day. And on day 8, she finds herself to be pure. Harezu b'cheskas tara, she can be presumed to be pure. Even though she waited an extra day, we give her that presumption. Badka b'yom shlishi lezivasa umatzah shepasak adam. We could even go further. What if she didn't check on day 1? She checked the day before. On the 3rd day of the sighting, towards the end of the day, she inspected herself and found that the blood had ceased. Did not check on day 1 of the count. Ubashvi badka umatzah tar, but on day 7 she did check and found herself to be pure. Harezu b'cheskas tara, she is presumed to be pure. Again, not ideal, but she did it, we'll leave it alone. For who had din lezav b'chalila abdikos, the same applies to a zav. If a man experiences an irregular emission in all of these inspections, shehu tahir, Allah yimei svira, he is pure, and the days of his count for him. Chav gimel, kol isha, she's fake nida, fake zava. Whenever we say about a woman that she's a doubtful zava, we're not sure whether she's a zava or not. Tzricha leishev shivas yamim nikiyim misafik. She must wait 7 clean days out of doubt. V'toivelas bilil shmini, and go to the mikvah, not on day 7, but on the night following it, like a nida who goes to the mikvah only by night. Ve'achar kach tiyeh muteres labayla, and only then will she be permitted to her husband. Umevia karban zava ve'enei nechal, she'll have to bring a sacrifice, but it cannot be eaten. Kameshi Yizbar bim kaimaz will be explained in its place, that every time you bring a sacrifice out of doubt, the kohanim wouldn't eat it. But in this way, she's treated like both a nida and a zava. And this is a great way to conclude the chapter by saying that everything we learned today is only in Talmudic times. The whole difference between nida and ziva, 7 days, 11 days, and having to know which category things are in, is only in those days. Today, whenever a woman sees blood, whether it be at the fixed time or the irregular time, whenever it is, we do 2 things. First of all, we wait till the blood stops. Typically on a period, we say 5 days. Then they do a hefsek tahara. On the end of the 5th day, she does an inspection to demonstrate that the flow is stopped. Then she begins a count of 7 clean days, like a zava. And after the 7 clean days, she goes to the mikvah. Rambam will explain in chapter 11. But this whole chapter, unless she disrupts it and then you got to go again, but the point is 7 clean days after the blood has completely stopped. And that's the way we do it nowadays. But here what we're learning about is the basic law the way it was before the Jews took upon themselves that stringency.